Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic, and today's comic is For Lovers Only, issue number 73, dated September 1973. This is definitely a strange comic, for sure. The cover itself is pretty provocative and a bit controversial even at the time. We see a young couple. The man has his female companion over his knee, and he's about to spank her. And I guess, I don't know what they were going with in this, much less using it on the cover. But it was definitely a strange tale. And yeah, spanking grown women actually was a thing in this country. We have two other stories. Both of them are as inappropriate as this spanking. So I'll get into it. The first story is Dangerous Kisses, and in it we have Giorgio, we have Linda, and we have Larry. Larry the Weasel. Larry the scary stalker. Because he's sadly the one who ends up with the girl. So anyway, we see the setting. It takes place in the UN. And it turns out that there's an employee, Linda, and she's talking to one of the delegates there. And the delegate is very good looking. He's a very charming guy. And he's kind of charming Linda here. However, we see another figure stalking Linda. And this figure is stalking Linda throughout the comic. And it's a little weasel named Larry Cobb, and he kind of works for like UN security. So these are three people attached with the UN. Giorgio is putting on the charm offense with Linda. It's working. They're gonna go out on a date. Larry is there to remind Linda that, hey, this guy comes from a country that we're not on good terms with. And he's, quote, considered an unfriendly delegate. However, Linda's like, hey, that doesn't concern me. I'm dealing with this guy as an individual, and I want to have lunch with him. And the two are talking kind of adversarially, almost. And again, she's saying, hey, this guy's no, super spy or anything like that. What information can she get out of me? And she says that she's a typist, a clerk typist, which means basically you're typing everything, including the top secret stuff. So actually, typists at this level, they actually know quite a bit. However, Linda is kind of standing her ground, saying that Mr. Cobb, as she refers to him, basically needs to mind his own business, and I can date who I want, regardless of the politics. So we see Giorgio and Linda. They're on their first date. It looks like they're in a Spanish restaurant. I'm assuming that the artist probably was from Spain, because a lot of the comic book companies would go overseas for artists. And so they're in this restaurant. Everything seems to be going well with Giorgio. And he wants to get more romantic with Linda. Linda notices this, and then they drive off. They leave the restaurant. So we actually don't know whether they kissed or not. However, we do know that Linda was stalked, because we see Larry the Weasel, as he's watching Linda and Giorgio drive off. The two, Linda and Giorgio, they're kissing in the limo. And then they get off. And we see Larry the stalker. He was able to catch up with the two. And he's watching them and listening to their conversation. Um, Linda goes home because these characters didn't do those things in these books. So she goes home and she's thinking about Larry, and she's thinking about basically how Larry was putting her under surveillance, which is a nice way of saying Larry was stalking me. Then it turns out that the bell rings, and Linda thinks it's Giorgio coming back to the apartment, but it turns out to be Larry the Weasel. The two are talking. She wants to know whether this is an official visit or not. Larry, who's been abusing his authority, doesn't really give a straight answer here. But then he tattletales on Giorgio and says that Giorgio is a married man in the country that he's from. And on one hand, and Linda's upset about this, and she just totally breaks it with Giorgio and just refers to the guy as a creep. But Larry is still stalking. Oh my God. So Linda is blowing off Giorgio, and Larry is just still following. Then it turns out that Linda is sort of relying more on Larry to comfort him. To comfort her, I should say, because she's still bothered by this breakup. So basically, Larry's just being an opportunist here. And of course, they start going out on what looks like dates, and then they turn into official dates. So Linda fell in love with her stalker. The two get home. They start talking, and then they fall in love. This is not the guy to fall in love with. And kind of lived happily, unhappily married, I would say. Yeah, this is not a good coupling. This guy's a creep. And Linda was taken advantage of emotionally. So, yeah, they're not going to work. Okay, so the next story is, it's called Let Me Go Back. And our protagonists are Wendie, Jiggs, and I think Agar. So there's three guys. There's no actual conclusion. So at the end of this story, there's actually no couple. It is a really weird read. So basically, the guy who drew the first story drew the second story. The third story is drawn much better. Okay, so we see what's her name? Wendie. Wendie's out with Agar. Agar's kind of this clean-cut, kind of well-dressed guy, three-piece suit. And then we see a guy called Jiggs. And Jiggs is the bad boy. He's kind of like Todd in Beavis and Butthead. And he's kind of dressed like Robin Hood here. So he definitely has the pirate look down. And his friend has striped pants, so that's not helping either. And Jiggs, he just uses terms of endearment like doll and baby doll. And anyway, he's sort of acting like he's in high school. So anyway, he sees Wendie. He's saying, "Hey doll, hey baby, you want to go to this dance? It's going to be a really great bash." And Wendie has such the hots for Jiggs that he blows Agar off. So he said, "Agar, we're gonna end this date right now because I got to be prepared for Jiggs and his party." Agar, ever the good simp, says, "Oh, well, I won't stop you, but you're not going to be happy with him." So anyway, Wendie completely ignores that. She completely ignores her date, and she goes off with Jiggs. So anyway, it turns out the two meet up with a old high school friend. I think she's in the back of Jiggs's car. And they're talking about high school when she got kicked out of it. Okay. And and Wendie immediately has doubts as they drive off about going with Jiggs. Um, Jiggs ever the bad boy. He's smoking there. He has one arm around Wendie, driving really fast. They go to a party here. It turns out Wendie might be concerned about maybe there's some roofies in the drinks because she notices that the soda tastes funny. And I'm assuming that the drinks were probably spiked. And Wendie's kind of a little naive. She's a little too old to be this naive, but yeah, this is the Wendie we're given. So anyway, the party continues. Everyone looks like they're having fun. Wendie and Jiggs, they're just dancing up a storm. People are impressed with Wendie here. Everyone starts making out, including Wendie and Jiggs. And Wendie's just falling fast for the bad boy. But she knows he's a bad boy. So anyway, the two are talking together. And basically, I think Jiggs wants to take it further. And, Wendie's complaining that she's out too late. And she wants to go home to mommy and daddy. So they're having a fight over that. So Jiggs takes Wendie home. Wendie is talking to her parents. Her parents are saying, "Hey, you should have been home earlier," and Wendie says, "I'm not a child," which is the complete opposite of the position she had earlier. So anyway, the parents are giving her the business. They don't like Jiggs. They heard he's a bad boy, and they want Wendie to break it with Jiggs. Wendie has some doubts about Jiggs, but she kind of wants to stick with him. So then it looks like Jiggs invites Wendie to a beach party. And Wendie says, "Yeah, I'll be there in a few hours." So she gets dressed. She's ready to go to her beach party. Her mom's there, warns her about Jiggs. Wendie says, "Hey, I'm not a kid. I'm not a kid." So anyway, we see Wendie and Jiggs. They're at the beach. They're just enjoying, I guess, the Santa Monica beach. Jiggs is kind of aggressive with his kissing here. I think Wendie is conflicted about Jiggs. She knows she shouldn't be with him, but she still feels something for him. Then it turns out Agar is there. But Agar isn't alone. He has a date with him. But Agar and the date, they see Wendie kissing Jiggs. And the two of them do back off, so they don't try to insert themselves into it. Wendie is saying that Jiggs is going on too fast, and then Wendie still has lots of doubts with Jiggs, but she doesn't want to leave him. So they go out the next day. So Jiggs is investing some time in Wendie here. Jiggs, he's banging on the horn, saying, "Hey, hurry up, get in the car." Wendie's saying that her parents don't like it, but Jiggs doesn't care. And then they start arguing about, acting civilized. And I think Wendie uses this as the excuse to break off with Jiggs. Because Wendie being rude, Jiggs being rude to Wendie's parents, that was too much for her. So she walks off. She joins the others eventually because she's wearing different clothing at this time. She gets back with Agar. And Wendie and Agar, they kind of talk it out, saying, "Hey, this is what was going on with Jiggs, but I'm not going to go for that type." And then they kind of end on a ambiguous ending, because we see Edgar and Wendie, they're together, but there's nothing to indicate that they're romantically together. They're just talking about, oh, we're just maturing and changing. So there was actually no coupling here, because I don't know whether Edgar and Wendie got together. Yeah, I kind of wouldn't feel good for either one of these two. They're quick to bail on a partner, and that usually translates into being quick to bail on each other. So yeah, I'm not going to make it. Okay, before I go back to the last story, I'm going to talk about the advice page. And this is Teenage Troubles. And it's only one letter, but it's a letter to a common problem. And it's basically, I'm 15, 16, and I want to get married. And the advice columnists would get a lot of these letters, and they would basically plead with the girls, don't do it. Don't do it. Get out of your head. You don't want it. You don't know what you're in for. So it's one of those letters, but the guy answering, he's kind of answering all these letters. So basically what's going on, it's a 16-year-old girl, we'll call her M, and she has a boyfriend named Billy. And the two of them have been going out for 3 years. So they've been going out since they were 13. M's best friend is Carol. And Carol's the same age as they are. And Carol started going out with Billy. And then, so it looks like Billy was cheating on M with Carol. And M confronted Billy about this. Billy said that Carol meant nothing to him and that he wanted to marry M. But then what happened was, as the date got closer and closer, Billy says, no, I'm going to marry Carol instead of you. So basically M is heartbroken that she's not going to get married at 16. And Dr. Glick's answering back saying that, okay, what if you got married, and even if money wasn't a problem, how are you going to address these issues? He also answers directly to the situation that this guy Billy is just kind of playing her. And a bunch of other things. The one thing of note is that this letter actually came from Australia, from Tasmania, Australia. I think that's why he picked it, because he wanted to show the girls that, girls, throughout the world have similar issues that you do. Okay, so he gave good advice. He was discouraging them from getting married. Okay, so here's the last story. This is the spanking story. I hate saying this, but it was definitely the best drawn of the three stories. This is beautiful artwork. It seems more commercial artwork than comic book artwork. This is very similar to when I reviewed that story, Running Wild. So then we see our couple. It's John and Kathy. And the two are very much in love. And right now they're just stunned by each other. They're just putty in each other's eyes. However, it turns out that Kathy isn't happy because they're living a suburban life, but that was not the life she was promised when she first hooked up with John. So Kathy is letting out some of her frustrations with John about what has been going on in their life. It turns out the two met while they were in the Air Force. John was a pilot. It looks like Kathy was kind of an enlisted rank, probably a corporal or maybe even a sergeant. So the two are talking and they're charmed. I mean, this type of fraternizing does happen in the military, although I think it's officially discouraged. So anyway, the two, they're their relationship grows more and more, becomes more romantic. John proposes marriage to Kathy. Kathy accepts, and they're both very happy and well drawn. It turns out that John had an idea. The two were stationed in the Caribbean. So when they met on that Air Force base, it was not an Air Force base in the United States. This one, it seems to be based in the Caribbean. And both of them seem to enjoy living there. So the idea that John had was that he would set up a commercial service once they were both out of the military. They could set up a commercial service in the Caribbean. The two got married while in the military, I'm assuming, probably to keep their benefits. And then it's shown that the two are out of the military at this point. But however, it turns out that John, rather than doing a startup in the Caribbean, he took a job in the States. And apparently, I mean, it's a well-paying job. It allows them a very nice home in, suburbia America. It looks like a beautiful neighborhood. However, Kathy's not really sold on this because, again, this was not what she was expecting. She didn't expect to be living in the boring suburbs. She was expecting to live in, Caribbean paradise. However, John's saying, hey, we have to make a go for it. And basically, I was a dreamer, and I've kind of grown up, and I realized I need more security. They start living a suburban lifestyle. John buys the car they probably can't afford. Everything's on credit. Everything is based on appearances. And then they encounter their neighbors. The neighbors are just, having their barbecues, on the lawn every weekend. John's pretty enthusiastic for the suburban life. Kathy's a bit more reserved. So the two are talking over breakfast. And apparently, Kathy wasn't a particularly good guest with the neighbors. And Kathy's very angry and very frustrated over the situation because she, living in the suburbs is really getting to her. And being nice to those neighbors was just too much. And the two are still fighting. Apparently that John isn't kind of getting it here. He doesn't realize how bad it is. So anyway, it turns out that Kathy is leaving him. Kathy has had enough. John's just not getting the hint. She wants to return to the Caribbean. So she flies out to the Caribbean, to places that she knows and places that she feels like there are economic opportunities. So she talks to the manager of this hotel, saying that, listen, if you could provide this service, we would, have a contract with you. And they agree, and she agrees to take a percentage of what they get. So I think basically they charge like $55 a person, and they'll fly over certain islands, and they'll just give you a little tour from the air. And because Kathy was involved in the Air Force, and because, apparently she does have knowledge of what type of market there could be for her skills. And it turns out there's a good market, and one of the pilots wants to talk to Kathy on a personal basis. So maybe Kathy is moving on from John and his boring suburban life. It turns out that the pilots want a long-term contract with Kathy because it would benefit them for having that financial security, and at the same time they can offer Kathy a rate that's lower than what she's paying now. The problem is that Kathy has to legally agree to this. And she's still hoping that John will somehow swoop in and they can have some type of compromise about what to do. Because on one hand, she does want to live this life, but on the other hand, she does want John to be a part of it. See, Kathy here, the art here is so beautiful. And we see Kathy, she's just on the balcony thinking about John. We see a scene where they're on the beach, where you have your business contracts, you sign them in bikinis, apparently. And Jim the pilot is really pressuring Kathy to get her to sign into a long-term contract. However, before she's about to sign it, a voice calls out saying, "Kathy, don't do that." And it turns out that it's John. John flew in from whatever suburban hell that he was living in, and he got here to the Caribbean and stopped her from signing that contract just in time. He's making ownership claims of her. Basically, you're my wife, and I'll tell you what to do. And then Kathy runs off, recognizing this type of abusive relationship. The pilot is utterly confused about what they're doing, and John is chasing Kathy into the water. He grabs Kathy, a beautifully drawn panel here, by the way. He takes her out of the water, against her will. I mean, she's talking about having him arrested and charged. So, he's not respecting her agency. And then he sits on a rock, he puts her over his knee. He has that hand raised. She recognizes what he's planning on doing. And she's saying, "You don't have the guts, you wouldn't dare." And he's saying, "Just watch me." Meanwhile, the pilot is watching this entire thing. And then it turns out this mofo spanks her. He spanks his wife, a grown woman. And they're making a claim that these are real spanks. And this actually was a thing in our society. I think there was an infamous man on the corner column in a New York paper, and they would ask various questions. And one of the questions was, is it okay for a man to spank a woman? All four of the men agreed. And so that's probably the culture where this came from. However, after being spanked by a child, John says, "Listen, bitch, you're lucky you got off that easy." However, it turns out that John had seen an ad that Kathy had put in for a pilot. He recognized what Kathy was doing, and then he sold the home and put a down payment on a plane, and they're going to start their business. So basically, Kathy got what she wanted. She got to live in the Caribbean paradise. She got to be with John. It cost her dignity. But hey, maybe it's a small price to pay for a seemingly happy marriage. I don't think this couple is gonna make it. They're gonna divorce. They're gonna fight. They're gonna stay with each other simply because of the business arrangements. But yeah, this is not a good coupling. So anyway, that's it. That's my review of For Lovers Only, issue number 73 from 1973. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.